Hi, everybody. How are you tonight? It's Lollard's time. Sit down, pull up a chair, and we're going to talk to Atlas about the history of Halloween.
Ooh. Spooky Halloween stuff. Ooh. It's actually not.
It's
tonight.
actually kind of fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not
No, tonight's a history lesson again, which we all know you love, dude. I'm like your history teacher. Don't lie. If you have an actual
one
history
of my history
teacher,
teachers.
just
One
tell
of my
him.
history teachers knocked up one of my classmates.
Oh, God.
Anyway.
Why did I know that was what I was? When you started saying one of my history teachers, I knew it was going to be that. Something like that.
That's exactly what happened, too. It was, I had a crush on her, too, and I was like, now I know why you didn't date me, because you were into older men.
Was she an adult?
When they have got knocked up?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, that makes it a lot better at least. I mean, it doesn't really, but like,
no, because it was like she turned 18.
yeah, that's. I mean,
was-
like, it couldn't have been like that big of a difference. You know what I mean? But like, happy Halloween, everybody.
No. It's scary stuff, man.
Yeah.
That's some scary stuff.
Childbirth is terrifying. It's just like, imagine the fact that people make more people. Anyway, tonight's episode is the 52nd Warlords episode. It's going to be about the origins of Halloween. If you remember last year on Christmas, we did an origin of Christmas episode, the Odin Claus episode.
Yes.
It's kind of like that. We're kind of like doing that. But for Halloween
Did
this
we
year,
do anything for Halloween? Oh, yeah, we did the Phasmophobia.
we did the
episode
Phasmophobia
last
Ghost
year.
episode, but this month has been all kinds of Halloween fun stuff, you know. So we have we're gonna end the month, and this is the last week of October for those who aren't listening live when we're doing this live. Halloween's on this coming Monday, so we're gonna end the season with the history of Halloween. We talked about historical stories about monsters and horror and legends of Halloween and stuff, but now let's actually talk about the holiday, right?
Yay.
Yeah. We're going to look thousands of years back. We're going to go way back, guys, to understand the beginnings of this beloved holiday where we like to stuff our face with candy at any excuse possible.
And dress like sexy and stuff. Dress
There's-
sexy this year. I'm just going to dress as a banana hammock.
There's a child next door to me for the first time ever. I don't know if I should put candy out.
Oh.
Like in real life. Like there's a child, there's two children that live next door to me, and I don't know if I should like be putting candy out. I've never had to before because never been children.
No one's ever come to my apartment, and I don't understand that because you've been to my apartment. There's like so many places to get candy. Imagine getting candy from every one of these doors. And I'm like, why hasn't nobody ever come?
Yeah.
I always buy a bag.
I was gonna say that'd be great. That'd be great. You should maybe put a little bowl out, and then maybe someone will see it with kids and be like, maybe just bring the kids out here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Let's get like a little tiny. That's what
Maybe
I
you're
was
right.
thinking of doing because there is other kids in the complex, but they're not near me. And I was thinking about putting a little bowl out, like a sign that says like, "Come grab some candy." Because if you don't live in an apartment complex, people usually don't trick or treat in them out here in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
That's
That's true.
I've never really heard of it. Sometimes people go to businesses, like at my work on Halloween. Sometimes we get kids.
That's weird. Yeah, no, I mean, like, I grew up in a wooded area with like just houses. So like,
Yeah.
we just went to houses, did the classic thing,
and
you know.
if you
Very
replace
stereotype.
woods with like wasteland desert, kind of, and yeah, me too. And we had a lot of people going like door to door. So
Halloween's fun out here, though. I like Halloween out here.
Halloween, I mean, the city definitely gets in the vibe. That's for sure.
Yeah. I'm from Massachusetts, so we have Salem, but that just becomes basically
a
a
tourist
giant
trap?
festival. Yeah, trying to walk around downtown Salem around Halloween or on Halloween. It's basic like imagine all those concerts like that Queen concert or all the raves where
Yeah.
people are just packed in like sheep. Like that's what basically Salem is, all downtown into the park area where the Witch Museum is, where all the bars are. Like we tried going down back in college at one point, and it was just like we didn't even go into any bars. We pre-gamed, went down, walked around for an hour, and then went back to the dorms to get more drunk because we were like, "Fuck that!" Like,
Yeah,
it was
no, I feel that.
ridiculous.
I feel that.
Anyway.
And I'm sure that a place like Salem, that has to be the case.
It's still one of the best cities in the world, Salem, Massachusetts. Love you,
Dude, shout out to Salem, dude.
goddamn.
Shout outs.
Dude, I miss it so much. I'll probably end up back.
I'm glad you like it. It's a cool place. All right.
It is.
So, just like all these other episodes this month, we're somehow going to end up back in Ireland. But it's not just Ireland this time. It's just Celtic people. You know, the Celts, the Celts, whatever you want to call them.
Yeah.
They're people of Europe. The Celts were mostly in Ireland, like the entirety of Ireland, but parts of the United Kingdom. Generally, I guess we could just for this purpose, the entirety of the United Kingdom, the entirety of Ireland, and this also includes northern France, was also a very heavily Celtic people.
Francais.
Which, you know, I think it's what became Brittany. So, you know, it's like the less French, more Celtic part of France.
Britannia.
Close. Very close, actually. At this time, the Celts are mostly in Ireland, though. That's like their biggest population, and Scotland. And they celebrate the New Year. The Celtic New Year is November 1st. So, yeah.
Okay.
Because they decided to do that with their calendar. It does make sense. Because that was when the harvest ended, and that was the end of their summer. You know, they kind of, I guess, had summer and fall kind of mixed up into one kind of season. And it ended. So when that ended and the cold came, that was when the year started. The year started with the frost. And that was a very, you know, dangerous time to be an ancient Celt, was the winter. It's very dark. It's very cold. Ancient, you know, you go back 2,000 plus years ago, you don't have a lot of nice warm times. It's all cold and dangerous, which is why.
Yeah, now we got climate change, which is why things are getting hotter
and dangerous.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is why in Celtic culture the winter is associated with death.
Yeah, I bet.
It's a common theme today with a lot of death and cold go hand in hand. You know, you got your White Walkers in Game of Thrones. If you look at like Warcraft, you got like the Lich King, there's armies of frozen zombies. You know, they associate each other a lot because that's why it's very dangerous to be out in the cold.
Yeah, no, I mean, even in modern times, winter is still can be pretty fucking bad. Like growing up in New England, like we had some pretty bad winters. There's always a handful more deaths in the wintertime. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, at least by way of disease and sickness. And
also like when I was doing research for the missing 411, there's quite a bit of cases that I don't think are suspicious because it's just like it was freezing and they went out and never came back. I'm like, they probably just died of cold. Yeah, you know, that kind of thing. Especially if you get lost in like a storm in the cold, like you're just probably going to die. Like that's the bottom line. Yeah.
It's very easy to die in a blizzard.
If you don't know what you're doing, you're probably going to die in a blizzard.
Yeah. That almost sounds like an old saying, like, well, you know what they say. It's very easy to die in a blizzard.
Like that, yeah, like that means something a lot. That's a common thing. Yeah, I know. Yeah. But yeah, this, like we just mentioned, it makes sense. A lot of people die in the intense cold winters, especially ancient Europe, especially where people in the Celtic lands didn't have much outside of small wooden or stone homes between them and icy winds. So you would just freeze to death in your house.
Not a lot of insulation in those homes.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
Exactly. Like if you're just living in a stone house, you're probably just going to freeze to death in the winter. So that's sorry, but that sucks for you. They believe that they believe the night before New Year, the boundary between our world and the world of the dead became blurred, which is when spirits would return to Earth and roam the world of the living once more.
Yay!
So there's that.
Well, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, this is the origin of that thought. Like, this is as far back as we can go. Oh, I do want to make a little disclaimer. So Halloween, we're talking about specifically, just so people understand.
Yeah.
This is just Halloween. I understand there is every culture in the world basically believes this day is like a thinning of the veil. They believe, like, you know, it's a very common thing worldwide, and it just has to do with the changing of seasons more than anything.
Right.
But this is specifically the origin of the October 31st holiday Halloween. So if you're like, oh, in China, I know.
Have you ever heard of Dios de Muertos?
Yeah, I know.
No, but also great holiday.
Yeah, I actually thought about doing a whole, like, thing about that, like, Day of the Dead. But I'm like, no, I need to just remove every culture except this European Celtic one. That's what we're going for. We're going for all, you know, Halloween. We're going to go through it to modern time. So we're still back in the ancient Celtic time.
Yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah.
So this Celts called this day Samhain, which we actually talked about last week a little bit. Samhain is the name for their holiday, which is the night of October 31st. The Celts thought that the dead coming back was a pretty bad deal because not only would they suddenly arrive and cause damage to things like crops and property, but it also could lead to many people being possessed by the vengeful dead.
Can't have that.
No, we don't want that going on at all. But fortunately, there is a silver lining in that their druids were able to make predictions about the future due to the thinning of the veil. And prophecy is a huge part of Celtic life. It was very important to receive good news about a shorter or at least easier winter, as it's a huge boost of comfort during the winter, because they all know, like, the death times are coming.
Right.
So it would be a big deal. The druids would be like, "Oh, we learned it's going to be an easy winter," and they'd all be like, "Oh, thank God! Now we don't have to die in the winter." And then, of course, it actually didn't come true a lot of times, but whatever. It made them feel better.
Surprise.
So that helps. So the big, maybe that morale boost could save a lot of lives, because you would just think like, "Oh, don't worry, it's going to end tomorrow, so we can hang on one more day," and they keep saying that for a couple months. The first part of the holiday was to let your home's hearth burn out while you are completing the year's harvest. So you would wake up in the morning, light the fire in the middle of your home, which is what a hearth is, and then you'd go out with your whole family doing your crop work. Usually with the Celtic ways, even the kids, the wives, the daughters, the sons, everyone worked in the field. So you'd go out.
It's a good team building exercise.
Yeah. So a lot of Celtic farms worked is almost like more modern day farms. It wasn't like not like modern day farms, but more like medieval style, where it wasn't like a giant farm where you hide workers. Basically, everyone had their own farm. So like your family was responsible for tending your farm. So everyone would go out in the morning, you light the fire, everyone goes out, does their harvest. And it should be the last harvest of the year. So once you return home, your hearth is usually out, and if not, you have to wait until it is out. And the druids would then build huge sacred bonfires in the middles of the towns, cities, or villages that they were responsible for. And the people would gather around these massive fires and burn. They'd take a piece of the crop from their own harvest. Everyone would bring their own little piece of crop to throw in the fire pit, and they would light it on fire, sacrifice animals, all in hopes of an easy winter to appease the wandering dead.
Yeah, they did. People did a lot of crazy shit just because they think that God's wanted it to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's like, oh, I'm giving this life, and we're not going to eat it. We're going to just burn this goat to death, right? In your honor of God. So, that's, whatever. Cool thing is the bonfires were actually lit mechanically. This is one of the earliest lighters ever invented. It's they made giant spinning wheels, lighting it via friction, which of course they thought was magic. And the wheel represents, the seasonal wheel, big part of every kind of pagan culture.
Yeah, right.
And Celtic especially. So they would build it, they would design these wheels, and they would put iron on the edge, and this fire pit was made with stone, and they would just spin it like a wheel. They would just have a crank and just spin this wheel super fast. It would spark the fire.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Good job, guys. I mean, it's not magic, but good job.
They thought it was like, oh, a blessing. They've chosen us. And the dead goats were, quick, kill your children. No, they didn't.
Wow, the druids are just winking at each other like.
They didn't sacrifice people, I don't think, for this holiday. Other ones, probably. Not this one, though. They would often chant in prayer during the lighting. It'd be like I said, a big magical ritual. Like the druids would be chanting and dancing, and then bam, fire starts, and everyone's happy, and the sacred fire is going. Great times for everyone going on. And once the fire is going, it was your responsibility to then grab a torch and light it from the holy fire, and then you take it back to your home and relight your hearth with it. And then what this does is it blesses your home with warmth for the coming winter.
I do like the idea of using community fire to spread to the smaller fires and
homes. So everyone's hearth fire for the winter starts with the same community torch. You know what I mean? Big bonfire. We're gonna light torches. We bring it back home. We throw it in the fire. During these events, the Celts often would dress up in costumes made of animal heads and skins, likely to hide from any spirit to make them not recognized as a person. And they would try to use their magic to tell others' fortunes during this time as well and prophesize their own futures. It's commonly seen in writings that celebrations would last up to a week, with constant drinking of mead in excess, as well as eating many baked goods and meat-filled feasts, saving the grain for the winter ahead. So they would usually not use the grain. They would use whatever like grain they already had for like flour to like bake pies, fill it with meat and stuff. But mostly it was just like cooked chicken or goat on a stick, and
Sure.
a lot of drinking, a lot of mead. People would get a lot of mead. But yeah, so like they would dress up like animals. You know, a lot of old depictions of druids, you see them wearing like the animal heads and the animal furs. And so basically this culture, which was Judaic, would, you know, dress up in the animal heads, the animal furs.
Classic.
Early writings about Samhain state that it was mandatory for all Celts, and you would have to show yourself participating to the local chiefs or kings. So often the chiefs would come out and the kings would come out to make sure everyone's doing it. And if you and your village failed to celebrate enough, it is believed that the punishment would come from the gods, killing your family or causing severe illness to spread through your people and crops for the next season.
Are you fucking partying or not?
Basically.
You want to fucking party?
Yeah, if you weren't party enough, the king would come out and be like, you gotta fucking dance harder. You better fucking break your feet on the floor. And they'd kill your family, I guess.
Break it down, bitch.
If you drew a weapon, or were seen holding any kind of blade or spear or bow during this holiday, you would be immediately put to death by the tribal leader.
Hey, this asshole! Sorry.
This guy's got a blade!
Sure. Get him!
So yeah, that was a big and from what I understand, there was no argument about it. Like, you just did not pick up a fucking weapon during this holiday, you were dead.
Yeah, fine. Look, that sounds fine. I mean, the punishment's a little bit extreme, of course, but I agree with the sentiment. Party hard and don't fight each other.
That's exactly what it was. I think they were trying to just make sure people who were drinking this much mead didn't just slaughter each other. So even the week of celebration afterwards, after people were getting drunk and stuff, was seen as holy. And people would party in excess as if it was the last time they would, because due to how harsh winters were, especially, you know, in Ireland and the UK, they very well could be their last time they'd party. So
no, absolutely. The pagans, they know how to party, man. They
Yeah,
really do. They got a good balance between punishment and partying.
And we were talking about how dangerous winters were. It's real bad in the UK. It still can get very bad, but back then it was even worse. So it was very hard to live in the environment during winter in the British Isles. The thinning of the veil would also attract not just spirits, Pat. You thought ghosts were bad enough? No, you're also getting fae.
Oh, I was going to say demons, but fae?
Fae, yeah.
Probably my third guess.
Fae and demons, interchangeable word in Celtic. So you're still right.
Then I got it.
Yeah.
I'm the winner.
You'll see so much. If you ever look at like old Celtic stuff, sometimes they say demon, and that's mostly a Christian translation of the word fae. Which, by the way, even Microsoft Word doesn't recognize. So, fun.
Yeah.
That's
because the goddamn Catholics.
This goddamn cross-bearer.
That's a joke.
It's a joke, guys.
Relax. A joke.
Though we will be ragging on them quite a bit in a couple paragraphs. All over the Celtic lands, it was very important to put out bowls of treats outside of your home and on your fields. This was to keep the fae at bay, because they would rather enjoy free treats that were usually made with milk and cream. Something the fae love. We've talked about that before, leaving milk and cream out for fairies.
That's right.
You would also want to keep your costume on, not just to hide from ghosts, but even primarily hiding from fae, to make them think you're one of them. Because a lot of fae look like animal-human hybrids, right? So if you're like, Harry, you have a deer head on, they'll be like, hey, look, it's another dryad or something. Just keep going.
What's up, bro?
Yeah.
How you doing, man? You gonna get some fucking candy? Sick.
Yeah.
That literally just sounds like Halloween, all of that.
Yeah, do you see it? Like do you see the connections?
Yeah, it literally just is like, yeah, so they did Halloween back then. If you didn't, you got killed, but, you know.
Just imagine trick-or-treaters having to go to houses and, like, hand scoop a palm full of cream out of a bowl. So gross.
Get your pillowcase open and get some cream in there.
Multiple creatures such as the puka. Remember that guy? Remember we talked about him?
Oh, I do.
They would often be seen out running rampant during this time, so you would always want to keep your costume on to avoid having one look your way on your way home from feasting, where you were probably drunk off of your knocker, and probably why you're seeing pukas in the first place. Just throwing that out there.
Maybe.
So, the Fae were a big part of it as well. But yeah, like you said, it's like we were just talking about. I mean, it was interchangeable with demons, so there's already kind of that spooky part of Halloween coming in.
Right.
By the year 43 CE, the Roman Empire had conquered most of the Celtic lands, and Rome would also invest heavily into this land due to its fertile growing capabilities, and they would rule over them for 400 years. So I wanted to emphasize that because the Romans really liked the British Isles. And one of the reasons they really liked the British Isles is it was very fertile. It still is very fertile land for growing things. And at that time had been basically untouched except by small farms. They were able to really just go to town on that land. And during this time, the Celtic people were allowed to continue celebrating Samhain because if you don't know, at the dawn of the pre-Christian Rome, which is when they took over the British Islands, were very open to all religions. They would let anyone, like the Greeks were still worshipping their version of it. There was Persians who lived with them who were able to worship their version of it. So they didn't care about the Celts. They could worship their Celtic religions. And, Samhain was still celebrated. But over time, even with that, it did start to mix with other Roman holidays. Specifically, two Roman festivals began to integrate themselves into Samhain. The first is Feralia, which is a day in late October where Romans would commemorate the passing of the dead. So, we have another culture with another holiday about, end of October is a day to worship the passing of the dead or ancestors or stuff like that. The second was to honor the Roman goddess of fruit and trees, Pomona. And the symbol for Pomona is an apple, and it's a city. I know, Pomona.
I know, but it's and of all the cities, it's the most nah.
I wonder if that city Pomona's crest is an apple, because that's the symbol of the god. I never looked it up.
I'm gonna look that up.
But yeah, the Pomona's symbol is an apple. Well, Pomona was the goddess of Roman goddess of fruit and trees. And standard practice for this celebration was to try to get a lucky apple for the blessing of Pomona without using your hands. You see where that's going?
I do. Bobbing for apples. The Pomona symbol is unfortunately not an apple. It is a lady. She is standing over a cornucopia.
Yeah, that's
full of fruit, but I don't see an apple.
Well, it's probably Pomona the goddess, though.
She's got a dog too.
I don't know about a dog. I don't know anything about Pomona, but maybe that could be it.
Now this is a Lords on Pomona.
Yeah, Pomona and why they bob for apples. Yeah, no. So that's where bobbing for apples comes from. It's a Roman tradition that over time started to mix with Samhain. So all these festivals started being kind of put together on the same day. The day that you would honor Pomona wasn't even on. I think it was November 4th. But because that took place during the week of celebration, it just kind of ended up being enveloped into the same holiday. So as we kept going, Rome got more Christian, and more Christian beliefs started getting forced upon the Celtic people. But then Rome collapsed before too much of that really got started in the British Isles. There wasn't much influence from the Christian side of things at that time in that area. But in the Dark Ages, the Middle Ages began with the lapse of Roman control, right? Rome started to fall apart.
Right.
Great Britain was pretty far away from Rome, so it was one of the first places that they pulled garrisons out. And the Celtic people, with this, were able to return to their traditions. They were mildly warped from Roman influence, but in general, they were able to, to go back to their traditional worship and practices.
That must have been a big celebration for a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of Romans stayed. So, they just decided to become Celtic people, a lot.
All right.
So, they kind of just, they still had their own little changes. And one of the biggest changes would be the bonfires, those big wheel bonfires that we talked about. They got changed into what were called samangans, I believe is how you pronounce it. They were more individual bonfires. That would be made on the farms themselves instead of community ones. So you would go out and have your own big bonfire in your field. And the tradition was to keep these lit throughout the night to keep the fae and now witches away from the area where they grew their food. This was also the first alleged time of them starting to use carved turnips to scare off spirits and fae.
I shared a picture of that last week in the Discord.
Yeah, we talked about that last week. We went really into jack-o'-lantern, so we're not going to talk about that this week, but this is when that turnip phase kind of started. So it's like Middle Ages, early Dark Ages, early Middle Ages kind of period.
Right, yeah.
But it's a big transition to where you can see the start of the Christian influence, where now they're afraid of witches, which coming from a community of druids would be considered witches. So you're already starting to see like the Christian influence is taking over the Celtic society. Yeah. This is also the time where Dumb Supper was born, which I've never heard of, but apparently,
Dumb Supper?
Yeah. So you haven't heard of it either. Apparently, it's like a kind of like a known tradition. This is where,
Is it like,
yeah. What do you think? Say it. What do you think it is?
I don't know. I'm trying to think of a bit for this, and I can't.
It's
already kind of funny.
It's weird. It's the idea of you would invite your dead to dinner on Halloween night. And what so what you would do is you would set a table with an open table space for all your dead, put a meal out, and invite them to join. And this gives families a chance to interact with their dead until after dinner, where they would leave the home and return to the land of the dead. So it's like a Halloween
now I know
night.
why it's called Dumb Supper.
Yeah, right, dude. Fucking dumb.
Yeah,
No,
I was gonna say because you only put out one chair for all your dead people. What if you have a lot of dead people?
You could do multiple.
You put them. You should make them sit on each other's
I didn't say
laps.
one.
Just because they're dead doesn't mean they don't. Oh, I thought you said one.
I may
chair.
have. I may have said a chair, but I meant that like you could put as many chairs out as you want.
Okay, good. I'm just checking. I was like, that's why it's dumb.
And during this time, children would often enjoy games and play these games with the dead to keep them entertained, and the adults would update the dead on current events and what's happened in the past year. But how do you get the dead inside? You leave your doors and windows open,
welcome.
Just all night.
God, that's how you get pneumonia.
Yeah, that's how you die in the winter. They left their doors and windows open all night for the dead to come and go. It was also very common to attract the your dead family members. You would bake their favorite baked treat and leave them outside your door in a bowl. So back to that tradition again.
And now it's baked treats too, which is nice.
Yeah,
it's not just cream in a bag.
Yeah, we're getting upgrades. I don't know what they used for sugar, but they were baked treats.
Honey, maybe?
Probably honey, yeah. There's probably druid beekeepers. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be long, however, until Christian powers wanted to reel in these pagan communities, and Samhain was seen as their foothold. Leaders attempted to reframe Samhain as a Christian celebration, basically a rebrand of the day to make it seem like Christians fit in with pagans and that these pagans should sign up for the church peacefully. And this was done by Pope Boniface IV on May 13th of 609 CE, where they dedicated, which this was done in the Pantheon of Rome publicly, to honor all Christian martyrs. And the Catholic Feast of All Martyrs Day was established in the Western Church on October 31st.
This is like a really big day. October 31st matters a lot for a lot of reasons.
Yeah. Well, so this was specifically because it already was Samhain, and they really wanted England to be like, there was, this is the first English kings were starting around, but there was still a lot of Druidic pagans in their lands, and the Celtic people,
right.
It's like, that's like why Celts are a faction age empires. Like they're a Christian nation, basically, but it was very muddy Christianity. Like they had a king that was crowned in a Christian way, but their people weren't very Christian. And the Pope really wanted to put down on them Christianity and make that a fact. So, they made All Martyrs Day. Your favorite you know that one, right?
Yeah, it's my favorite.
Yeah, we love All Martyrs Day. So this was an attempt to move celebrating the dead into a form of celebrating the martyrs and saints instead. Right, so instead of you're the dead holy people instead of just dead people.
Yeah.
This did not work at all. Failed horribly.
Womp womp.
Yeah, just failed. The Celts kept doing Samhain the same way they would. The Christian Celts would also then celebrate All Martyrs Day the next day on November 1st. And October 31st would be Samhain for them. So, yeah. They kept doing the same rituals. And all throughout modern-day France, Ireland, Wales, Scotland, and much of southern England, there still was a lot of Samhain worshipping going on. A lot of people doing that kind of stuff.
It seems like the practical holiday. Everybody gets candy.
Yeah.
You get to talk to your dead, which, I wouldn't mind talking to my dead folk, people who died. I almost just said folks, as in my parents. I'm like, no, they're alive. But it'd be nice to talk to some dead people. It'd be kind of cool.
Yeah.
I'm not really scared of dead people.
So the next attempt would be Pope Gregory III in the 9th century. He moved all celebrations back to the time of what they referred to as the, quote, pagan fire festival, being Samhain. He would do so and declare it All Saints' Day. Now, this one you probably have heard of before.
Yes, I know this.
Yeah, he would declare All Saints' Day to be November 1st. It still is today. And All Souls' Day would be November 2nd. It still is today, but less talked about. All Saints' Day is it's the same thing. You honor the Christian martyrs and saints, whereas All Souls' Day was the one for, okay, you pagan people can worship all your dead. All the souls can be worshipped on that day. Kind of thing. So,
right.
Despite having the holiday on the same day, many Celtic people, even those who were Christians, simply would follow both practices. They would just do both. So, it didn't really get rid of it, but it did boost the popularity of the Christian holiday because it was so simple to do. It wasn't like an issue. You could just fit both in at once.
Right.
By the 9th century, Christianity has spread so deep into the Celtic lands that the Celtic people were mostly Christian at this point. Like, they were like half and half. Like, people, like I just mentioned, would celebrate both. Like, they were full church-going Christians, but they would also do their little pagan rituals at home.
I like that. That's the best, is when you're like, yeah, I do this, but I'm going to do this too because it's fun.
Yeah.
Because it's fun and it brings people together.
Because what my family believes in for the past thousands of years. But it did begin to gradually blend together.
Fun.
And their beliefs started to supplant older Celtic rites with more Christian rites. And the creation of All Souls' Day in the year 1000 and same day, All Souls' Day, All Saints' Day, that was founded in 1000 CE. And would directly be the Christian church trying to replace the Celtic Festival of the Dead with a related church-sanctioned holiday. And it basically worked.
That's basically what Christmas is, as we discovered.
100%.
It's like started off as Norwegian pagan and then turned into basically Christianity.
Yeah, that's why I said this episode is going to be similar to the Odin Clause episode. We're now following the same exact history path.
Man, Christians really were just kind of co-opting pagan holidays just to make them more fun because they were miserable otherwise.
Yeah, it was, Christians were, let's just be honest, the Middle Ages were miserable. So,
yeah.
All Saints' Day would be celebrated traditionally the very same way to the old fire festival of Samhain, with local Celts even referring to the holiday as Christian Samhain for a while, which really helped many of the local Celts decide to convert to remain Christian. So a lot of conversion happening this time, and they saw it as a good thing that the major religion at the time was respecting their culture, which, while it was, we know the real reason was nothing nice but fully sinister, because they just wanted money. After the year 1050 CE, the Christian church had converted just about every single Celtic pagan, and the ones who remained often did so behind closed doors, under fear of being accused of being witches. All Souls' Day, however, didn't last too long, because the celebration was mostly the same, using sacred bonfires, but this time they were just blessed by Christian priests instead of druids, and people dressed up as well, but instead of animal hides and heads, they would dress up as angels, saints, devils, or even demons, to scare away the dead who would return, and scare them back to the afterlife.
It's more fun to customize, be original, pick your own demon to dress up as, you know?
It's just, it's like
I'm going to do a Zazel.
It is. I'm going to be a Zazel this year. You be Asmodeus. It's interesting that they would be allowed to dress up as demons and the devil. You know, that doesn't seem like a very Middle Ages Christian thing to be okay with, but I guess they were.
Look, the thing about stuff that I like, okay, if you can justify a reason to get people scared and make people nervous, it's gonna be used. You know what I mean? And that's what that kind of, I think, is. And that's the idea, is like, let's get people scared, and it also scares kids. A lot of these things I always think about with children. I always relate it back to kids. I'm like, some of this stuff is great to scare the shit out of a kid young and keep them like kind of in line. But that's just kind of my thought.
Yeah, no, 100%. You're scaring kids, and you're gonna get the dead back. Go back and stuff. But Halloween, the whole holiday doesn't actually have much to do with kids until modern day. Like, it's not like a scare, keep your kids inside thing. It's literally just praying that you don't die of cold in the winter. that's it doesn't have, it's not like the other myths we talked about. It's like a moral, you know what I mean? Like, it's a very,
fair enough.
People believed in magic and religion very openly, so they really tried to not die in the winter and prayed hard for it.
Right.
So, they would, October 31st, they would dress up like that, and it would soon become known as All Hallows Eve or Halloween during the Middle Ages as well. So that became the day because, hallowed ground, hallowed, means like sacred, right? So it became the eve of the sacred day of All Souls Day and All Saints Day. So like it was Hallows Eve. Right. They contained much the same practices, but this led up to the 19th century, being the same holiday practice just about the same way. The names All Hallows Eve and Halloween were used interchangeably. They still are today. Some people still call it All Hallows Eve in some places, most of Europe. But Halloween's the most common one. And this is where we start to get into the more modern style of things. Because we're going to talk about America.
Fuck yes! Let's fucking go! Let's fucking go!
America, my dude.
Okay.
Fuck yeah, brother. So America had a hiccup with Halloween.
Oh.
Because, they stopped celebrating it in New England. Because, rigid Protestant existence.
I've heard of it. I know that. I've heard of that era. I know that era.
So they weren't very chill with stuff like Halloween. This led to the holiday being almost entirely forgotten by colonial Americans. But it would see some practice in Maryland and the South. Those would be the two places that would really practice it.
Those rebels in the South.
Those Southern people. Due to the colonies of America being mixed cultures from almost the entirety of Europe, it became very different. All these different, like German Halloween, Italian Halloween, French Halloween, British Halloween, they all kind of mixed together in America. And a very distinct American Halloween was formed out of this. And this is the one that is prevalent around the world today. Because fuck yeah, America.
We did win the culture war. If this was a game of Civ 6, America would have won.
Yeah, this is an example of that. Basically, what we have as Halloween today in America is how it's celebrated around the world, and it just came from the cultural mixing of Americans.
That's actually a big proud thing. I'm actually kind of like, that's cool, man.
Yeah.
Anyway,
it's kind of cool. So for the first time, people would host parties to celebrate the year's harvest, removing religious context in the event entirely in America. Which is a very American thing to do in the colonial ages.
Yeah, yes it is.
So people would gather in costume for no reason other than forgotten tradition, often to look scary or to scare children, or looking funny to make children laugh or other people laugh.
Love it.
In the early times of America, like we're talking about in the colonial ages, the political costumes were very common. People would often dress like mocking versions of the king or other English lords.
It's literally what we do today.
Yeah.
Have you seen how many Biden masks there are?
Yeah, 100%. And they would gather at large estates or public forums to host feasts. Public parties were commonly funded by the city, and anyone who could come and enjoy it. Anyone could come and enjoy it and have a good night of celebrating. And it became common practice as well for children at the time to visit others' homes and ask for treats. And if they did not get them, they would threaten mischief upon the estate, land, or property of the family.
Trick or treat, smell my feet, give me something good to eat.
Yes, this is kind of where it's starting a little bit. The parties themselves were known to be very wild, legendary, as a matter of fact. There's many writings in the old colonial journals and letters and flyers for these parties. They had free-flowing... Get what?
Can you just imagine like weekly letters to your parents or something back in a different state, and it's just 1 week it's just kind of well, work on the farm was getting a little cold, so we decided to wrap up early this year. I don't know why I'm making them British because when they're American, but and then the next week it's just I partied so hard I got to nail Margaret this time. I'm so happy, I'm so drunk, everything was crazy, the whole place was on fire. Then the next one again it's just kind of everyone's closing up for the winter.
I'm just imagining the first one's all proper like you said, and the second one just starts off and said dearest mother, it's bro, comma.
Yeah, bro, have you seen this dump truck?
Bro, the Clintons party last night?
Fucking rager.
So yeah, free-flowing beer, excess amounts of meat, and loud dancing and singing to music. So much so that people would often not even try sleeping, and they would often just party instead. Like, even old people would just be out partying American. Because they'd just be like, fuck it, I'm not going to sleep anyway. Let's just get fucking wasted. That's such
an American thing to do. Yeah, it's such an American thing. Wow, we were Americans pretty early, weren't we? Okay.
We really were. So many people would honor their dead, because, again, mixed cultures. They would do that mostly at home because there was such a mix at that time. It was hard to do it publicly with groups,
Right, that makes sense.
So they would do it that way. And some would share stories of it and that kind of stuff. But that was about all that was left from the old connection days of Halloween, It's kind of broken apart into this kind of just fucking party rager day.
I love that. Yeah, then we kind of lost track of it for a couple of years because basically everyone was drunk. But we pick up around here.
The second half of the 19th century saw the Irish potato famine.
Yikes.
Yeah, big yikes for them, which had America suddenly flooded with new immigrants from Ireland. And these immigrants...
Everybody knows how to party.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So these immigrants settled all over the country wherever they could, and they brought many older Celtic traditions with them. Because, that's who they were. And the idea of the day being more closely connected to the dead is really brought back during the late 1800s. And people began dressing up like skeletons. They started having decorations on their homes that were more dead themed than just harvest themed than previously. So this is where they got to see the spooky side of Halloween really kind of come back. The popularized holiday became it became much more popularized around the nation, as everyone wanted to take part in the holiday because there were so many Irish immigrants that brought this. Like, almost every state was now on board with this new Halloween. And dressing up became more of a thing. It used to just be like, oh, you would dress up like the king and make fun of him kind of thing and like hang out at the party that way. But now basically everyone dressed up, and everyone who went out on October 31st to be dressed up as like a monster or a demon or a devil or an angel or some joke costume, and they would scare people with the ideas of the dead returning on October 31st. Scary costumes became more common than funny costumes, and this is when we started seeing, like we talked about last year, the jack-o'-lantern started showing up.
Right. Yay.
So Americans started this tradition of going house to house asking for food or money on the holiday by saying the phrase trick or treat.
Wow, that started early.
Yeah. This implied that if they did not get a treat, you'd be tricked by them instead. And this actually comes from two different Irish myths and one popular English practice. One is the puka, which we already talked about in the Irish cryptid episode. But just to go over it a little bit today, it's an Irish cryptid is a type of demon or fae, whichever you want to call it, that would take children with them to gather treats on Halloween. So that was kind of like, that was a little bit of that. People would just say a fairy's making them ask for treats when they really just wanted candy. The other one we mentioned earlier, which is when Celtic people would leave out bowls of milk or cream or sweetbreads, stuff like that, to feed the fae creatures, to stop them from messing with the family. Which now just switched from fae messing with your family to local children vandalizing your property.
That's so American.
Yeah, so that happened. And this evolved over the years to become leaving out sweets or baked goods that would be heavily sweetened into what today, of course, we have candy. But back in that time, sugar was flowing for the first time, really. So that was like, this is the dawn of the age of candy. So it was popular. The third one, the English tradition we mentioned, actually comes from the Middle Ages, which is an All Souls Day tradition, so on November 2nd, which was the biggest celebrated holiday as a way for Christian families to pray for their dead. And during the celebration, the celebrations and festivals outside, poor children, who usually were orphans, would beg for food from well-off families who could afford to go to these large feasts. And in response to this, these families would bake small pastries called soul cakes.
Okay.
Soul cakes, still in Europe, still a thing. But if you're American, or I think maybe Canada has it too, but if you're American, you probably don't know what a soul cake is. They're just little tiny like round cakes that usually have like a print in the middle, some kind of mark in the middle, like a thumbprint or something. But they're just like general. It's like bread with sugar. That's all it is. And they would,
it's still good.
Yeah, it's good to give to little orphan kids who are hungry. And soul cakes would be freely given out to children who asked for food during the holiday. And in exchange, These children would pray for the dead of the family you received the cake from.
That's nice.
Yeah, so it's kind of like a trade. The church would openly encourage this practice as a way to replace the ancient traditions from the Celts of leaving out food and beverages for roaming fae, because they didn't want that to be a thing. So they started being like, "Oh no, we just give treats to starving kids." Like that's what you do now.
That's fucking dirty socialism. Is that's what that is?
Socialist church.
No, that's a really great idea, actually.
Yeah. So, yeah, they saw the idea of leaving out things for, like, to scare off fae or ghosts as blasphemy. So, they did the soul cake thing instead, and the church officially named it Going a Souling. Going -a-souling.
That sounds like such like a Hillary Clinton Pokemon Go to the polls.
Yeah, it does. It sounds like a very bad, bad buzzword made by someone who doesn't understand things.
Yeah.
When All Souls Day became Hallows Eve, it pretty much lost this tradition. Like that, All Souls Day is barely even a thing nowadays. So, like, when that kind of started, like, the whole going a souling thing kind of stopped. But yeah, it became trick-or-treating in America, basically. But the trick part...
I love it.
The trick part of this is a bit more interesting. As the idea of pranking people on Halloween does seem to go all the way back to ancient tradition, like we talked about before, but it seems to always be in good fun over actual danger or damage. Like, like, I'm going to prank you more than, like, I'm going to burn your house down.
Yeah, I'm going to, like, TPing.
Exactly. Like, it's annoying, but, like, people find it funny, and they could be like, you rascals, as opposed to, like, oh, I just lost everything. So this applies...
It's a pretty big difference between those two things.
This applies to the idea that the thinned veil is the time to perform tricks such as divination, which became very popular in America, especially during the turn of the century, the 19th to 20th century. Divination became a very popular thing with the fortune tellers and that kind of stuff. And they would try to learn their future on Halloween, which, if you remember, we talked about the prophecy of the Druids before. Very similar thing. Same exact thing. Came back. People thought that, we can tell the future on Halloween because the veil's thin. So, just another example of an ancient practice just resurfacing itself. In the later half of the 19th century, we saw a move in American media to push Halloween to be a more family-friendly holiday, about coming together as a community and having local parties and get-togethers rather than being about celebrating the dead, causing mischief, or doing witchcraft. It would be around the year 1900 that the Halloween costume party became a common thing, with multiple houses on each street hosting their own, as well as parties focused on games or food of the season. And during this time, at the dawn of the 20th century, there was a large push in the public to remove anything frightening or grotesque out of Halloween.
Well, that's kind of not the point. Anyway.
No, yeah, it's not the
at least modern day.
It's not the point, but it wasn't really there either. But people like to do their gross Halloween gore stuff, and we kind of talked about this during the movie episode, because this was also during the time when like Dracula was very popular and Frankenstein was very popular. All those Penny Dreadfuls really were common knowledge at this point, so they were kind of scary. So people were trying to be like the let's not make it so scary and make it like a family thing, and it was somewhat effective. Halloween kept its horror theme in a friendly, laughing skeleton way publicly, but behind closed doors, people strived to keep it more frightening with things like we talked about just a second ago with like, horror movies and stuff like that.
Right.
What this did do, however, at the removal of the grotesque and the making it more family-friendly, is this was the last time we ever really saw any religious context behind Halloween in the public. The media had officially abandoned any of that idea, any worshipping of the dead or passing of the dead. And going forward, the media just had Halloween about selling costumes, candies, and decorations, and put it from an obscure drinking festival to a modern holiday to celebrate every year with money behind it.
As we say, capitalism, baby, let's fucking go.
A lot of money to be made in Halloween. And it became for everyone of every background as well, which is one of the reasons why Halloween is so beloved today. Everyone celebrates Halloween. It doesn't matter where you're from or what your religion is. It's Halloween.
Yeah.
Most people don't even know there ever was a religious background to Halloween. Like they basically just killed it. Good job, America.
We killed it. We did it again, everybody. We killed another religion.
We killed a religious holiday, turned it into a money holiday.
That's basically what we did to Christmas.
Yeah. So, it's a $6 billion industry today. So,
Holy shit.
yeah. After the Great War, Halloween became a community-centered holiday. The parades and town-wide parties and entertainment. The movie business would explode with movies such as Dracula and Frankenstein, like we talked about before. On Halloween, every theater slot would be filled with these movies. Costumes were mostly handmade, but companies did begin selling accessories or materials to make costumes and seeing a profit around the year 1920-ish. That was the first time you could buy a costume. Right. This is the golden age. Despite the efforts of the media and the families to make Halloween friendly for all, this era is when vandalism became to come hand in hand with Halloween. Many communities around America would have problems with youth causing damage to the town during celebrations, which caused a large amount of police to be required to work the holiday.
Youths!
Yeah, basically. News of this would spread outside of America, and Europe had similar issues of vandalism. The effect of this would increase in police and guard active out in the towns during the holidays and watching holiday events. Parents kept a closer eye on their children, specifically teenagers. And many schools began to prohibit any Halloween festivities on their premises to discourage vandalism there.
Yeah.
Then this thing happened where the Great War got a sequel, and that broke out in the 40s. And many of these issues were stopped due to many teens having to sign up for the military and being sent away.
Yeah, man. That got so real so quick.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So they were these vandals became very good at vandalizing Germans. And during the war in America, Halloween continued on and celebration was encouraged due to the dark times. So it was, again, a situation of like everything's so fucked up. Let's make it happier. We talked about this in the horror movie episode too, where horror movies pretty much died after the Great War because people were so sick of dark, fucked up things. They decided let's make it like a happy time for everybody. Yeah, let's stop thinking about death. So,
yeah, that's kind of like I feel like we're in that right now, where everyone's just being like, everything's dying, everyone's dead, everyone's fucked. Like we're in that shit now. I'd like to have the upswing soon. That'd be great, please.
I don't know. We'll see. See what happens over in Europe. So following this, we saw Halloween as we know today formed after the war. It has spread outside America as a worldwide event. It is generally seen as a holiday to get dressed up and watch a scary movie with an excuse to consume food and drink in excess. We still do it. It's just one night instead of 7, but we still go out and get fucking wasted on Halloween night. As a kid, you go get candy. As an adult, you go to a Halloween party and get fucking blasted. Like,
yeah, it's one of the best reasons to do it.
That's
basically what Sunday was basically me getting blasted dressed up as a Leaf Village Chuny.
I wasn't dressed up, but I did get a little blasted. When I started working on this episode, I saw that as like the old thing, like, oh, it's a week of celebration of drinking meat and eating turkeys, and I was like, that's weird. It's like not a thing now. And I realized, wait, yes, it is. It's just one day instead. It's just the adult version of it. You still get fucking blasted.
Yeah, which is kind of shitty. It'd be nice if we could do it for 7. I mean, like, I wouldn't drink for 7 days straight. That seems like too much. But like, 7 days of celebration and maybe like 3 of those be a drinking. That's the first time, by the way, I think I burped on Lore Lords. I want to point that out. 52 episodes.
I don't know if that's true, but it's just because you were drinking so heavily for Halloween. That's why you did it, right?
It's still coming back. Yeah.
There is one last thing I want to talk about this episode, which is was started in the 80s, which was the unexpected rise in a practice known as Wicca.
I know a lot about this.
Yeah, so Wicca is just a modern day nature-based pagan practice.
Yes.
With this, we saw the return of the Celtic Samhain as well. Many people returned to the large sacred wheel bonfires, as well as honoring nature and ancestors with the holiday. It's seen as the passing of the year by Wiccans today, and they often incorporate common Wiccan traditions. So we're kind of seeing a resurgence of the ancient stuff, which I know about living in Southern California and having communities of pagans around. I know this is a thing people do.
Oh yeah, no, I was talking about Salem earlier. I feel like we have a kinship of knowing how these people work.
Yeah. And
It's cool to watch, actually. It's cool to be a part of.
yeah, we also have druids again. There's just people who are practicing
Yep.
druids, and they practice the holiday in its form handed down by ancestors. American pagans try their best to copy the practice. Witches' balls are music and dance celebrations that are held nowadays. They've been going for 40 years. I saw like this is like the 43rd Witches' Ball at Salem was this year. So like they started in 1980.
Yeah, that makes sense. That all makes
Or
sense.
79, I guess. But pagans do it to celebrate the passing of the dead in times around the end of November. Because, Wicca is not like an ancient religion. It's a modern
No.
practice of paganism from cross-pagan culture. So it's like they kind of try to respect every kind of different paganism. But there's also...
Which is,
yeah.
nice. It's kind of like a unity of such.
Oh, 100%. It makes sense with the fact that you can almost count the pagans in your city on one hand. That like you kind of need to have them like kind of get together if it's going to be a thing, like real pagans.
Yeah, right. I remember I think I was saying this to somebody recently, but it was always fun to like go over a friend's apartment or something, and she would just be like, all right, here's my living room. That's where the TV is over there. That's where my plant is. There's my shrine. And the shrine's like this massive table covered in like pagan and Wicca and all sorts of different like paraphernalia and skins and like bones, antlers, flowers, alive and dead. You know what I mean? Like all sorts of different stuff. And then they'd be like, and there's the refrigerator. Like that was such a common thing. If you'd go into like a lot of different people's apartments and homes, they would just point out their shrines, and they are all different shapes and sizes and stuff. But it's really, really cool. And sometimes you ask about one of my friends, she had an actual skull in her, and I was like, how the fuck did you get that? And I didn't get an answer.
Oh, that's just Clarence.
But,
anyway.
Yeah.
There is one last group of people I wanted to bring up, which is a group of people called Celtic Reconstructionists. These are the group of people who faithfully reintroduce the ideas of the holiday in the most ancient Celtic way possible. Very popular in America and Ireland and Scotland. Those are like the three places that you'll find these people. This tradition has another name for the holiday, which is, I don't know how to pronounce it. It's Oicheshamnhna. So
I'm not going to try.
Shamana. I mean, I know it's pronounced different. I'm American. This celebrates the mating of two gods, the Tuatha gods, which are the Celtic kind of god. I think that's how you say it. If I remember from hearing it in Final Fantasy, they say it. So I'm trying to remember how they said it in that. But the two gods are Dagda and River Unis are the two gods, and they got married on this day, which is kind of like the celebration, which is we didn't even talk about today, is how fucking old it is. And they celebrate by placing juniper decorations around their homes and outside, and they create altars for the dead and feast in their honor. So that is as far ancient as you can go, and their group is trying to bring it back today. And that's the history of Halloween, folks. Now you know where it came from.
That's
you know
all
what it
she
is.
wrote.
It was a Celtic ancient tradition to honor the dead that became a Christian celebration of taxation, and now it's a holiday to get candy and get fucking wasted.
Yeah, and I think that's a wonderful tradition, and I'm glad that we've kind of turned something old new again.
Yeah, and turned the new old again in the same time. Yeah. That's Lore Lords, guys. Thanks for listening tonight. It's the 52nd episode. We'll be back. I'll see you around.
Go get pissed.